Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. Democrats have just one more night to drive home their message and rally the troops with just 75 days to go before the November election. Tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris will officially accept her party's nomination. It is happening on the same night of her 10th wedding anniversary. So how do you cap off a week filled with celebrities, high energy, and raucous roll call? Our DNC coverage continues with a look back at last night's moments and analysis of what we can expect tonight. My guests are Dr. Elsie Scott, director of the Ronald W. Walters Leadership and Public Policy Center at Howard University; Jennifer Thomas, journalism professor at the Howard University School of Communications; and Dr. Ravi Perry, Howard University political science professor. It is an HU conversation. Thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. I do want to go straight to last night. Let me start with you, Dr. Scott. Kind of give me your assessment of Tim Walz after hearing him. And as a matter of fact, even before you share your thoughts, I'm going to play a little bit, and then I'll have you react on the other side.
And we made sure that every kid in our state gets breakfast and lunch every day. So while other states were banning books from their schools, we were banishing hunger from ours. We also protected reproductive freedom because in Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and the personal choices they make. And even if we wouldn't make those same choices for ourselves, we've got a golden rule. Mind your own damn business.
Well, there you go, Dr. Scott. The feeding hungry children in school, mind your own damn business, and protecting reproductive rights. Your thought about Tim Walz, not just what he said, but how he said it.
My first reaction is, how could you not like a guy like that? And he comes off as honest, sincere, and a regular. I won't use the joke because that would be referring to our present president, but a regular on the street. And so I don't see how anybody could dislike him. And he comes off as a person who cares, who understands the little person. And so I just think he's a winner.
You thought he was a winner. What about you, Ravi? I know you've been paying attention, watching, again, not just what Tim Walz said, but how he says it. The pre-Tim Walz build-up last night with the football team and the like. I just thought it was really well choreographed.
Well, yeah, I think that he hit the job out of the park, and the job was to do an introduction of himself on the national stage for the first time, and it was everything that it could have been. You had his family, his kids crying, in just admiration of their husband and father. You had ex teammates come out to support him now, 20, 30 years after originally having coached him, some in seventh grade, others in high school. It really showed that this is the kind of person that many people obviously want to see as their next vice president, someone who picks up a shovel and helps a neighbor that needs their driveway plowed, someone who helps a kid get lunch money, and then 30 years later when they're governor, make sure that they actually have the resources for not just that one kid, but in the state for every single one of them. That's the kind of leader that I think most people expect out of politics. Politics is, by the way, who gets what, and you need someone there who's actually focused on you, so you get what you deserve. And I think he did a good job describing that he's the kind of guy that's had a record in Congress and in the State House and doing exactly that, and doing it across the aisle, doing it in rural areas, doing it with populations that have long been disaffected with the Democratic Party.
Your impressions, Jennifer.
Well, first, thank you for having me here.
Sure.
And we're here actually as part of Howard University News Service. So I'm here in journalistic mode. We have journalism students that have been covering the convention all week. So I'll say from a journalistic perspective, it's been one of those moments in history that you want to say you're a part of covering. As our colleagues have already mentioned, we've had some great moments on stage, hearing from the now vice presidential candidate. It's a good time for us to remember why we are here in terms of our student journalists that are here reporting. I can say that from the moment we have walked in, seeing hundreds and actually probably thousands of journalists from all over the world document this moment has just been unique to see. I was here in this same United Center in 1996 to see Bill Clinton accept the nomination for president. So it's a full circle moment for me. So that's my journalistic hat. Personally, my Jennifer hat, it's been an incredible time, as everyone has said. I think all of the speeches have been on point in terms of the Democrats continuing to make their message that we are unifiers, that this is not a country of divisiveness, that the Democratic Party is united, starting from night one with President Biden and the tribute to him and his speech, down to the Obamas and the Clintons, and then with all of Hollywood coming behind it. I can tell you, being inside the United Center has been electrifying. And so, as part of what we do as journalists is just documenting what we see and what we feel. And it really is, it's electrifying.
Dr. Scott, you and I spoke yesterday about just some of your observations. What has surprised you? What did you think was most interesting? Share some of the things that you have been seeing that you found really fascinating.
I think one thing I mentioned to you was the number of Middle Eastern background people who are here. Indians, Pakistanis, various countries from that part of the world, but they are Americans, and they're sitting in the audience, and they're loving on the presidential nominee from the Democratic Party. They are feeling like they are part. I've never seen that many. This may be about my sixth convention I've been to. I've never seen that many sitting in the audience and cheering on the speakers. This is a very diverse audience here in Chicago. There's large numbers of African Americans. There's large numbers of Hispanics, and there's been a large number of Hispanic and Black speakers every night. And so you really feel like this is an inclusive lot of women, quite a few young people. So I think it feels inclusive, and everybody maybe feels like they have a seat at the table, which did not happen, back in the days, but it's been alluded to. That was the other thing. I thought that it was nice that they've alluded to Fannie Lou Hamer and what happened when the Mississippi Freedom Party delegates were not allowed to be seated in Atlantic City. And I thought it was also very interesting that they recognized Jesse Jackson when he ran for president, and they had a whole civil rights brigade, I would call, that came on the stage. Melanie Campbell and Derek, the head of the NAACP, they came out and made a statement, and then they brought Jesse out along with a lot of other civil rights leaders. And so there are people in the audience who did not know that Jesse Jackson ran for president because they are too young. And so I think most Black people probably know it, but there are a lot of others in the audience did not know about his historic run and his building of the Rainbow Coalition. So I think that was another good thing. There are a lot of other things to touch on, but I don't want to take up too much time.
Dr. Perry, Dr. Scott just talked about the diversity that has been seen during the DNC, the RNC. Yes, there was some diversity, obviously, but it looks very, very different. What do you think that says about where this competition is right now politically?
Well, it's a diverse audience because America is diverse, but also the Democratic Party is a Big Ten party. So, and particularly having it hosted in Chicago, right in the center of the Midwest. I'm biased. I'm from Ohio, and so the Midwest is always the best place to be in America, and it's a very diverse place. A lot of Arab Americans in Michigan and West Ohio and Southeast Michigan, in greater Chicago metro area as well. So it's also easy for people to access. But the party itself, I think, with Harris at the top of it now, is more naturally inclusive. Whereas perhaps in other white leadership settings where the top of the ticket is someone white, that the natural overtures and to the cultural mores beyond white hegemony may be sincere, but may not come across as genuine. And I think what you see here from the obvious lived experience of Vice President Harris, being of South Asian, Indian, and of Jamaican, Caribbean ascent, what that suggests is that obviously she's naturally in tune to the diversity of the American experience, and directed the DNC to be sure that that is not a window dressing on the set, but is genuinely embedded throughout all of the speakers, across age, across disability and inability status, across religious brown, and also across partisan differences. We've seen some significant Republican voices that have come out, top brass former Trump administration officials who have commented on the importance of voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in this election. And so I think she inherently embodies inclusion, and I think she directed the DNC and her team to take over there where the base is in Wilmington, Delaware, because obviously that's was where it stemmed from in the Biden campaign, and his background, to diversify. And we've seen that. We've seen thousands of new volunteers sign up as a result of this campaign shifting, and where she is at the top of the ticket. And so her directions seem to have been heard very well, and now we get to hear from her tonight.
Yeah. Real quick before I go to the break, and we can finish this on the other side, Jennifer, you have a rather unique, you're in a unique position. In 1996, if I'm not mistaken, you were in television,
Yes,
at the time.
absolutely.
But now as a journalist, but also an academic, how difficult is this to cover compared to 96?
That's a great question, and from the academic lens is, I think, how I see the difference. Covering it in 96, of course, it was the pre-internet era. So you saw the traditional journalists there with
Yeah,
pen
what
and
was that
pad.
like?
Yes, I know. I remember looking at some of the pictures and I was like, wow, this was really something. But, we were all at different, levels of the inside the stadium. I mean, everyone was just running around doing what they had to do. And now you look around and everyone's on their phones looking down. They're doing like what we are, using good old technology. And so there are so many more journalists that are here that I recall from being there and from all over the world. And what's different is they have a creator suite this time. So the administration is really being intentional about reaching out to creators online. So as you walk through the United Center, there's an entire tent where they've set aside places for creators to do what they do on social media, to be
So
more
hold that
inclusive.
point. Hold that point. I hate to interrupt you. I've got to take a really quick break, and then we can continue this conversation on the other side. The Original Quiet Storm is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues about the Democratic National Convention on Sirius XM Channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our Democratic National Convention coverage with a look back at Day 3 moments and analysis of what we can expect for the last night. My guests are Dr. Elsie Scott, Director of the Ronald W. Walters Leadership and Public Policy Center at Howard University, Jennifer Thomas, Journalism Professor at the Howard University School of Communications, and Dr. Ravi Perry, Howard University Political Science Professor. Jennifer, before the break, you were talking about the kind of difference between 1996 and the Stone Age when we were covering, and
right,
and that phasers on stun. Do we have enough dilithium crystals?
Exactly.
Is the transporter working?
Exactly. And yes, and so what we were saying is, now due to convergence, we have everyone that can really call themselves a journalist. And I think even seeing all the people running around with press badges, with outlets you may never have never heard of, it's a little different, but it's interesting in the fact that they're really taking strides to make sure that everyone can be a part of sharing this moment in history. So I think that's been really perspective. On the academic side, ethically speaking, covering journalism, and you remember this well too, Harold, that back in the day, we didn't really share, there wasn't really any opinion-based journalism very much, except in an op-ed. And now it's sort of become embedded in the culture, a lot, I think, due to former President Trump's era when he was attacking the media and we had to defend ourselves. And so we ended up, talking a lot about what was going on personally. And now we have a lot more opinion-based news programming. That has made it very challenging to teach our next generation of journalists the difference between reporting and opinion-based reporting. We talk about the notion of objectivity is really not there. And after the George Floyd in 2020, when that incident happened, we saw a shift in how we as journalists started reporting the news, especially as it pertains to Black and Brown communities, and speaking out more boldly about what's going on. But now, being at an HBCU, being at Howard University, where the soon-to-be presidential candidate was nurtured, it's a different time because the students are excited because we're at Howard. They're excited because it's an HBCU, but then they're having to, walk the line of being journalists. So it's just been really interesting having those conversations and seeing how those stories come into play with all of these things surrounding us. And of course, then with social media and so many people telling the story, but not necessarily as we would traditionally do as journalists.
I want you to listen to this, Dr. Scott. This is Maryland Governor Wes Moore last night making his DNC speaking debut. And I want you to share your impressions when you on the other side.
It's the journey of a man raised by a remarkable immigrant single mom, a man who felt handcuffs on his wrist at 11 years old, who now stands before you as the 63rd governor of Maryland and the first Black governor in the history of our state. It's the story of a prosecutor who defended our freedoms and had Maryland's back when we needed it most. And now, MVP, we've got your back as well. Right.
Dr. Scott, we've seen and heard a lot of talk about people saying to Governor Wes Moore 48. I mean, we haven't gotten to 47 yet. He is extremely popular, as he just said. talking about his background and the only black governor in the United States right now, and also talking about how Kamala Harris was supportive of him after the Francis Scott Key bridge collapse. From your perspective, is this the same as Barack Obama making that first speech back in 2004, or is that comparison just a little too high?
I don't know. There were a lot of people uh, texting, tweeting, and posting about Governor Moore's speech, and so many people talking about he's next in line or whatever. So I think that, I know he made a very good impression on people who had not heard of him, had not heard him speak before. But, just as important, people from Maryland are still saying good things about him after him being in office for a while. So I think that speaks well for him. It is interesting that I think it might have been on the day of the insurrection at the Capitol. Somebody had called me who works on the Senate side, just making sure I was okay. And then once we finished talking about that, the person said that, no, maybe it wasn't that call. But anyway, this person called me from Maryland and said that Wes Moore was going to be the next governor. I said, who is Wes Moore? How you think he's going to be the next governor? I never heard of him. They start listening. I live in D.C., so I don't have to keep up with Maryland
Right.
closely. But it was amazing how this guy was so right who would call me to tell me about Wes Moore. Then I started hearing all these things. I started reading what Oprah was saying about him. And so he is not disappointed as governor. And he didn't disappoint when he had his appearance on the big stage. And most of us who saw Obama's speech in the Boston convention never will forget that speech.
Yeah. Dr. Elsie Scott, thank you so much. I know that you've got to run. I appreciate the time that you've been able to spend with us. Please continue to enjoy and absorb the convention, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Perry, same question about Wes Moore. That do you think that the Obama comparison is a bridge too far, or is it close? What do you think?
Well, Obama was running for Senate. He was at the time really a long shot in a seven-way race, and with really, really little name recognition, etched out a win, and the rest is history. Whereas Moore is already a sitting governor, the only governor of African descent in the entire country. And so there are some differences there, differences in age as well. But yes, he has the same gravitas, as that's what we're talking about. He has the ability to build an audience. He has a record of bringing people together. His slogan, which you see on signs throughout the DMV as you're entering and exiting Maryland, is leave no one behind. It's a rallying cry that works well with the Harris Walls campaign message. So I understand why he was on the night of last night introducing the slate of individuals, particularly with military background, as we were heading into the VP biography story of Tim Walz. I thought it was also important, I would say, as an openly gay man, that Pete Buttigieg was there as well. It's very interesting that you can talk about identity, and both he and I think Buttigieg did this, where they talk about their identities in ways without actually being explicit necessarily, but being very clear about the fact that this is the big tent party that embraces all kinds of families, of all kinds of backgrounds, and there's another party that does not. And by the way, hey, we both served, in the military, so we know the kind of sacrifice that Tim Walz made for 24 years in the National Guard. So I thought from that point of view, it was very, very important. I am a member of the board at the Black Veterans Project, and I think it's very important that we had veterans speaking on behalf of that important legacy of Tim Walz, particularly as J.D. Vance, his opponent, as we get ready for the October 1st debate between the two of them, has tried to somehow belittle that service as if it's insignificant.
Yeah.
And I was just going to add, I absolutely agree. And you've heard this common theme of inclusivity throughout everyone's speech. They're talking about be free to who you love. They've had a number of people come on, and even Walz said, you can disagree with someone and still be a good neighbor. And I think that's that resonating theme that I think they have done extremely effectively throughout each and every part of the campaign. We know that, America is very diverse in everything. And I think they are trying to draw that line in the sand between the stark differences between the two parties. And it seems to be really resonating here, especially when you look at the reactions that you're getting from the Trump campaign.
Mm-hmm. Let's hear from Hakeem Jeffries, who was extremely entertaining as he was delivering his message.
Donald Trump is like an old boyfriend who you broke up with, but he just won't go away. He has spent the last 4 years spinning the block, trying to get back into a relationship with the American people. Bro, we broke up with you for a reason. Trump was the mastermind of the GOP tax scam, where 83% of the benefits went to the wealthiest 1% in America. Trump failed our country during the COVID-19 pandemic. Trump is a chaos agent who is focused on himself, not the American people. Trump tried to destroy our democracy by lying about the election and inciting a violent mob to attack the Capitol. Trump put 3 extreme justices on the Supreme Court who destroyed Roe v. Wade. We broke up with you for a reason. Donald Trump can spin the block all he wants, but there's no reason for us to ever get back together. Been there, done that. We're not going back.
So Jennifer, Hakeem Jeffries, I broke up with you. We broke up with Donald Trump. Spinning the block, the bad boyfriend bit.
Listen, there are a lot of women we talk about women supporting Kamala Harris and watching this campaign. And I'll tell you, more than half of the women related to that.
but certainly not well, me.
Not you, and not
No, always the good boyfriend. But
so I think starting off with the boyfriend analogy was genius, and he's making those stark comparative analysis between the two campaigns. And then you had Kenan Thompson and his SNL skit, carrying that huge book, and having people share the good things. Well, no, this is what will happen if you go there. So I think Jeffries was very effective, and it's interesting to see him in that position. We don't know what may happen if they get enough, 4 seats that they need on the Democrat side. So it'll be interesting to watch, but he was definitely, I thought he did a sound job.
Well, I know what'll happen. What'll happen is we'll have an AKA as president and a Noop as the Speaker of the House. And, that's going to be a good day. That's what will happen. But I actually wanted to comment on that as well, if I may quickly, Harold.
Yeah,
I got to run, but I wanted to mention that what I loved about that message coming from a heterosexual man, and talking about the boyfriend analogy of Donald Trump, is that the one subgroup that Harris-Walz campaign does need to be concerned about is Black men. And for a black man to go up there and to use the analogy like bro, but you do it also in a relationship context and in a way that makes it sense not only for those who obviously heteronormatively can relate to that, but those like myself who understand that bro to bro analogy in a different way. But for those, I think, straight men as well, giving them license to understand that this is a campaign that is good for them, and that, to view the relationship with Trump as something to break up with, I think is something that I hope resonate with a lot of black men who are a group that Harris Walz's campaign need to be concerned about.
Before we lose you, Dr. Perry, I wanted to ask, what do you believe that Kamala Harris needs to say tonight? The Democrats, they're in the church already, and all of the speakers for the past several days have been speaking to the choir. But what does she need to say, and what needs to be heard by the independents, those disaffected Republicans, those people who are thinking about voting for the first time or what have you? How does she convince these people to vote for her?
Well, I think she needs to, one, highlight a couple things that she did very well this week. One, I thought it was very wise that she and Walz went up to Milwaukee. To be in Chicago for this week and not to go next door to a battleground state, I think would have been a mistake. I think, just as it was said earlier, that's very important that we have content creators there. It's very important to reach out to young youth community. If you are not active on TikTok, then you are not going to win this election. And so, there are important touch points that she can highlight that her ascendancy to this position already has by evidence that what has already happened to DNC, has brought people together in ways that they simply were not when Biden was at the top of the ticket. And if she can demonstrate that, well, she's already brought people together. She's already broadened the tent. She's already crossed the aisle. She's already reached out to rural and to urban communities and to suburban women as well. And that if she can continue that message and include others to and join her and to go in those neighborhoods, as former First Lady Obama was saying, and do something, that I think that she'll be able to pivot then to a little bit of perhaps some short policy bullet points that unfairly, if she's had any criticism in this so-called honeymoon period, that detractors want to use for her. Her rise in the polls and winning in battleground states vis-a-vis Trump. But the one criticism that she has had is that, so she so-called doesn't have policy initiatives. Well, that's ridiculous. Obviously, the Biden-Harris policies are also, policies that she had a huge role to play in. But secondly, there are actual no policies until the convention is completed. Technically, what the conventions are for delegates to nominate candidates and to adopt a platform. The Democratic National Committee's platform draft is, I think, 70 or so pages. The Republicans was 16, which is an improvement from 4 years ago when they had nothing. But it's a detailed document, and I think now, once this is concluded tonight, she will be pressed to be able to answer more detailed policy-oriented questions, and to perhaps do some of those sit-down media interviews without any kind of structured setting, just live and free-for-alls. And I think she will do very well on those. I mean, we've seen her do that from the courtroom. We've seen her do that as a member of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. And so, I don't think that will be difficult for her, but this speech will be the launching pad for her to be able to move from biography, move from ascendancy to this role, and move from having already done a great job at bringing people together to say, well, now I need your help to expand that tent further. We've got 75 days in order to make this thing actually happen. And by the way, here's the policy sheet that you should take with you.
Yeah. Dr. Perry, thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on tomorrow. We will talk to you then. Jennifer, I have you for these last 10 minutes or so. You were kind of nodding your head when Dr. Perry was just talking. Your thoughts on what he was sharing?
Yeah, he made a lot of key points, and I think when you talked about what does Vice President Harris need to do tonight, and I think what we've been hearing, of course, in the media lately is, well, she seems like she's a great candidate. Yes, she was the vice president, but we just really don't know her. I think they've been very effective. Their media team has been very effective with getting out the videos and from the testimonials of those who do know her, from her blended family. To those who knew her in different aspects of her personal and political career. I'll tell you, walking around with our collegiate journalists from Howard, and when people stop to ask them where they're from, every time that it's been a non-Black person and they say Howard University News Service, they go back to Howard University. That's where she was from. And it's interesting because then they want to sit and talk to someone. A couple of people wanted to take pictures with the students because they realized she was from Howard. So people are starting, people have asked, did she really work at a McDonald's when she was a student? So you see, they're starting to learn more about who she is as a human, but not just as a human, someone that's relatable, but as someone that can really do the job that the country needs. And, a lot of people have said, well, anybody, in comparison to what, those who are not on the side of Donald Trump will say, well, how much more can a person done? She's done, her resume speaks for itself, right? But I think she making the case to the American people and those who may not know her, those who may have been on the fence. There are a lot of youth. We talked about youth. We did a piece on Howard University, on HUNewsService.com rather. Dr. Elsie Scott was actually featured in the piece that we just had online this morning, along with Al Sharpton at one of the youth caucuses. And you look around and there are youth everywhere. That has been really good to see in terms of getting youth involved with the political process, letting them understand, what democracy is and how your non-vote affects your life. People don't realize that. So I think I'm just continuing to do what she does, speaking to the youth, speaking to our, Black men and those in America who may not feel that comfortable because they don't know who she is, whether it's for gender, race, or a combination of both.
Yeah. Let's listen to Oprah Winfrey real quick, and then we can talk about the other side.
You're looking at a registered independent who's proud to vote again and again and again because I'm an American and that's what Americans do. Voting is the best of America. And I have always, since I was eligible to vote, I've always voted my values. And that is what is needed in this election now more than ever. So I'm calling on all you independents and all you undecideds. You know this is true. You know I'm telling you the truth, that values and character matter most.
Other than former President Obama, former First Lady Michelle Obama, maybe Bill Clinton, Oprah Winfrey is arguably the best recognized or most recognizable person between any of the conventions, and Donald Trump, obviously.
Right. Absolutely. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I guess the thing that I'm wondering, because we know it's, the DNC has been, as the young folks say, lit. Okay.
Yes, it has.
There has, I don't think I've seen, a bigger party with, an all-white party in DC with line dancing and everything else. But is there a danger of too much celebrity? I mean, there was some at the RNC, but at the DNC, there has been, from Stevie Wonder to
Mm-hmm.
Little John
Mm-hmm.
to um,
John Legend and
actors,
Patti LaBelle.
legend. Yeah, just
They've
um,
been, well,
is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
personally, in from I guess from my professional perspective on it, just observing a media critic now in a way, I don't think it's a bad thing. You have to get, the goal is to get everyone, and to get everyone to vote. And those people who may be less likely to vote are the ones who may be following a John Legend, seeing her, rock out on the guitar. And then some of the other ones who may not have voted in a while, seeing Sheila E. or seeing faces, Nikki Guyton, people who they recognize. If you remember, though, Barack Obama was very, very genius and strategic about involving social media and involving and celebrity. And people can argue every day about whether or not athletes or entertainers have that social capital where they should be, standing there in the gap. But whether they want to or not, people look up to them. I mean, we have Beyonce reporters, who's a former Howard graduate and former student of mine, Taylor Swift reporters that are covering this because they're such cultural, they make such cultural impact, right? So, I think that you have to meet people where they are. That's why they're content creators here. I don't think we would have seen that, 20 years ago. People who are not who are not credentialed journalists like we are, that you have to fill out forms to be in this space. So I think we're in a place in America due to where we are with social media, with convergence, with so many people using social media platforms, so many people looking up to these celebrities as we looked up to Oprah Winfrey. When if Taylor Swift, or if you have who is it that performed Megan Thee Stallion, and all her followers, when she made her first appearance using the Beyonce song, Cowboy Carter being played. So I think it's strategic, and I think it's in a good way. I don't think you can overdo it, although many people, I don't agree with those critics that say it's too much. But to your point, though, I will say she has to make the point of the policy and meet the press. And, everyone is chomping at the bit trying to get her to do that press conference. And that's when, we'll see what she has to say. But I'll say about that, too. We've seen Donald Trump's press conferences, and what policy has he really discussed? Yet his supporters, it doesn't matter. They support him anyway.
Yeah.
So,
final question before I wrap things up, because I know that you have the inside scoop. Are we going to see Beyonce tonight?
Well, they've been making subtle references to her, but they've been subtle references to Taylor Swift throughout too. And so some of my Gen Z journalists, are wondering if we might see her because of that. There's a buzz, the beehive is buzzing, as it were, out here. And I don't know. It would be amazing, but we certainly are going to be in there to find out. And I'll tell you what, people are coming in droves early. Things don't start, for a few hours here in Chicago before the gavel hits, and people are already lined up at security because they don't want to miss the significant moment in history. From HBCUs, there are a number of people here that are covering it. We're here with Morehouse College, Morgan State. I'm told your alma mater is here, journalists covering it. But it's been wonderful to see us in the room documenting this moment in history too. So we'll find out about Beyonce. If so, I'll be sure to text you a photo.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, please do. Who knows? It could be Beyonce and Taylor Swift. That's a ticket that you may never see again. So look.
Exactly.
Professor Jennifer Thomas, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure. Be safe. Yes. Looking forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here.
We also want to thank Dr. Ravi Perry and Dr. L.T. Scott for participating in the conversation earlier. That is the Daily Drum for this Thursday, August 22nd. I'm Harold Fisher.